Yes. So I'm going to a little bit explain the title of this, in 5 minutes, the title of this presentation, this panel. It's on music, black holes, data, and stars. So what's the title all about? And what's the connection between all those different components? First, I'm going to maybe quickly give you a very quick overview of what a black hole is. Probably all heard about black holes. They're everywhere in space. There's much more black holes than we initially thought. A black hole looks a little bit like this. So this is a rendering. So this is not a real black hole. We have a picture of a black hole that was taken recently. But it looks like a little bit a Photoshop, you could say, filter. But this is what really would happen if you would fly in near a black hole. And what is interesting in a black hole is that it poses a very fundamental question about the nature of reality, because black hole basically is a point, we say in physics, in space-time, so in space, with the property that if you come too close, the gravitational force is so large that if you would want to build a rocket to escape the attractional pull, you would have to go faster than the speed of light. Yeah. And if something that is Einstein has taught us in 1905 is that there's a speed limit in reality, and that's the speed of light. Yeah. So the region in which this happens is called, the boundary is called the event horizon. So, and what is very interesting in physics is that beyond the event horizon, we don't know anything what happens here. Yeah. And there's no information coming from here to here. It's impossible. There's a lot of theories, and what's my personal angle connection to that? In order to know what happens here, you would need a theory of quantum gravity, and that's a theory that encompasses both the theory of quantum physics and general relativity. And that's also a problem that fascinated me personally when I was a teenager. I got, by accident, in a book on quantum physics, and I read about this problem. And one of my dreams was to maybe one time work on a theory related to that, quantum gravity. And that got me to black holes. So a project, and this is one of the projects. There's also Vincent here is going to be in a panel. He's also working with black holes. Micromeras, and the idea of micromeras is, so I'm trained as a physicist, as a mathematical physicist, but also as a musician, electronic musician, and I combined both my passions for music and physics in this project Micromeras, and the aim is to create music using data coming from space, from deep space, and also from models from theoretical physics. So I work with several project series in this project. So this is the one on black holes, ADS CFT 001. Basically, this is an album work in which all the tracks are created using data, so that's the data component in the title, coming from simulation models of black holes. And the technique that I've been using is called data sonification. It's originally a scientific endeavor in which scientists are looking for ways to transform data into sound, so not to watch the data, but to listen to the data to get new insights into the data. So this is one way to approach the physics of black holes, but Vincent Caers, he's from KU Leuven, he has another approach, worked on another approach in using black holes to make music. So there was an album released that was beyond our expectations, picked up quite a lot internationally, so we released it in 2021. And as you see here, it was on DJ Mag, and from there out it spread a little bit all over. Also picked up by Ars Electronica. Maybe some you know, this is a festival. They also have prizes, so it got an honorary mention for the STARS prize. It's a prize on arts and science projects. Now the data, to get you a little bit of an impression of the data that I've been using for this album, because we'll be talking about data. One part of the data is gravitational wave data. So I did a collaboration with Thomas Hertog, and I think Vincent also worked with Thomas on projects on gravitational wave data. So the thing was, I had to make music for Thomas Hertog, is a Belgian physicist who worked with Stephen Hawking. He did his PhD with Stephen Hawking. He worked with Stephen Hawking, and he asked me to make music with a talk. And the idea was to use gravitational wave data. And gravitational wave data is data that is being produced when two black holes meet in space. they can, if they're close enough, they will swirl around each other and they will merge into a bigger black hole. That's a black hole collision. It's a super massive event that creates gravitational waves, and gravitational waves are they're waves of oscillations of the curvature of space-time, we say in physics. But practically what happens if there's a gravitational wave, you just oscillate. You become bigger, smaller, just like a little bit oscillation that happens. And for Thomas, the collaboration, there had been sonification being done on gravitational waves, but they're not very interesting. It's just, yeah, voila, Vincent knows, yeah. It's just boring whoop sound, and it's like that. So, and Thomas asked me, yeah, can you not make symphonies out of that? So I was like, oh, yeah, that was not so easy. But with the help of Thomas, I could make three-dimensional renderings of simulations of black hole gravitational waves. And this is a rendering that I did. It's a combination between scientific software. This is a rendering that's been done in MaxMSP. It's in a visual program. And here you see in the center, there is the merger of two black holes going on. So here they're merged, so now it's not so interesting anymore. The interesting part is when the blob here becomes very irregular. Yeah. Whenever I had such structures, I could make two-dimensional intersections. So this is a two-dimensional intersection of such a situation. So here, the merger is very interesting of the black holes, and now they are merged. So, yeah. And using such kind of data, you can think about a lot of ways to transform it into sound, to sonify it, to do artistic stuff with it. You can also plot them in 2D, so that's a two-dimensional representation. It's an onion representation of a gravitational wave that's expanding. Another one, this is the cover of the album. I think I might have the only album, I'm not sure yet. So this was realized in our studio, and that's software that's normally used by data scientists. Yeah. So, and this is the album cover, so I think, yeah, it's not AI or, yeah, so it's a computational model, but it gave very beautiful visuals. I also work with visual artists. Vincent also works with visual artists, who then, I work with Jaromir Mulders, a very talented artist from the Netherlands, and he makes like artistic interpretations of scientific models, scientific 3D models, data streams that I give him, and then we have conversations, and then he makes these beautiful visuals. They're live visuals. This is just one rendering of the picture. So yes, and in our panel we will discuss the different ways that Vincent is using. This is another. These are other data sets that I've been using. This is a particle trajectory of a particle behavior of a certain kind of particle near a certain flavor of black holes. So there's basically 4 types of black holes. I'm not going to go in all the details. And the connection with the stars, I've also been using, these are light spectra of white dwarfs. So there's a database of white dwarf light spectra and what is a white dwarf? I don't know if anyone knows. Yeah. It's an imploded star that is not heavy enough to become a black hole. Yeah, it's like an it's so first you have a white dwarf. If it's heavier, it can become a neutron star, and then you have a black hole. So these are also were used for the production of the album. We also do collaborations with IPEM. So that's Pieter-Jan, his institute, and so this is a picture of a performance we did at ASIL, an art science interaction lab. That's from IPEM, and they have an amazing. Concert space with a surround system with 80 speakers and 8 subwoofers, I think. Yeah, 4. Yes. Ah, yeah. Okay. Yeah. But anyways, so he will also be in the panel. Yes, and I think that's the presentation.
Thank you so much, Pieter-Jan and Vincent. Can I join us upstage? Welcome, gentlemen. So, while I was trying to wrap my head around a brief history of time, you guys were all actually studying it and getting PhDs. So, I think what Stephen Hawking did really, really well was take super difficult concepts and make it accessible for humans like me to understand. So hopefully my job here today is to help try and interpret what you guys do and how you do it. So let's get into that. I've been looking forward to this panel so much. I really have. I've been geeking out completely. But I did sit and wonder, like, when I was first presented with this, I was like, what does music, data, and black holes have in common, right? And my favorite joke as a kid was actually, entropy ain't what it used to be. And I really kind of dug deep and started thinking about structure and complexity and transformation and all these wonderful things. And actually, if you think about how music is just the transformation of data into sound waves, and so we can get really deep, but unfortunately I have been told we only have about 20 minutes, so we're going to keep this short. Valery, you've done 35? Excellent. Okay. Valery, thank you for your introduction. Pieter-Jan, do you mind giving us a brief introduction as to why you're here and what your background is and how you deal with data and music and potentially black holes?
All right. So like Valery indicated, I'm coordinating research mainly at IPEM, so the Institute for Psychoacoustics and Electronic Music, and so we have quite an amazing laboratory, which is meant for research, but well, it is equipped with lots of technologies, and VR, immersive audio, data networks is really like the main technologies that we explore. More on fundamental research, but we also like to connect with artists to explore and think about how these technologies can also contribute to innovation in the artistic and the creative sector. And so in that framework, well, I know Valery already for a while, but so we got connected again, and so the idea was to set up a collaboration and provide our art and science interaction lab and the technological facilities there to display his work. That is a bit of the context. Now, it is a research lab, and it's quite well. The infrastructure is quite unique, maybe, and so it's not a concert hall. It's first of all a space to develop concepts, and then once a concept is developed, we can show it to the public, and that's what we like. It's also a networking space. And so, the piece was very suiting because it's an immersive audio piece, also added with visuals, and so we provided the facilities to stage it and to think about the possibilities, and so we grew into other ideas, and currently we set up new pieces. And so that's why it's called the Art and Science Interaction Lab. We really want, from the scientific community, we want to support artists and provide the infrastructure also to facilitate these concepts. This is a bit of the broad context.
Amazing, thank you for that. Speaking of immersive experiences, Vincent, you've created a whole immersive experience of what it's like to walk towards a black hole, except in this world we get to come back. But I'd love to know how you drew inspiration for that. And I mean, there's so many. I went to your website, some phenomenal installations you've done. Truly, I wish I was there for all of them. But would love to know kind of what you draw inspiration from and what your creative process is when you start thinking about using black holes or golden records for inspiration and turning those into something people like us can experience.
Yeah, so that installation you referred to is the solitary one, which was a project I did with Klaas Verpoest. I'm an electronic musician, and I did the sound part of it. And we collaborated with also with Benjamin Glorieux, who is a cello player, and with Stéphane Détournay, who is a theoretical physicist, working on black holes and all those things. So the main thing of data-driven came from Stéphane and fled to us as artists. And one of the things we started from is, Valery already mentioned, there is now a picture of a black hole. I suppose most of you may have seen it, like the yellow one, where you have like a circle in front and then it falls back. And we got the commission for this Cosmos exhibition to make like the subtitle was From Micro to Macro, and we got the macro hall. Yay! So we needed to make. We were asked to make a really big installation, and we came up with like, couldn't we recreate this in an audiovisual way and make it accessible? So what would be the experience if you would walk into that picture? What happens with sound? What happens with the image? And then with Benjamin, who already collaborated with us, we kind of turned the idea to what happens if you throw a cellist into that, and what happens with what he plays, with his sounds, how is material transformed when it starts circling around the black hole, creating this accretion disk you earlier learned. And so that installation came in that way, and then we decided to split the picture up. So basically the upper side, which is actually the accretion disk folded back, what you see. So basically it's around this, but then the light folds back because of the gravitational pull, and you kind of have an upper. It seems like it goes up and down again, but it actually doesn't. But we perceive it that way, and we made that like in the LED wall. So there was half of it was in the LED wall. And then we made like 3 sort of circles with speakers, which would then be the sound part. And so all the material Benjamin provided as a cellist, and that's the part that came from the golden record. So as a starting point, we said, okay, we're going to take the music, which is on the golden record, where there's scores from, because the thing I created in my PhD to perform electronics with is based on classical scores and how you can. That's something else with the data set we can maybe later talk. But and so then the idea was, okay, there's Benjamin plays stuff and it gets into the accretion disk and it starts circling and it influences the image. It comes back as a sound, and then Klaas and I, we out of what Stefan could tell us and of all the formulas that are in there, I mean, he could calculate what happens there because he's the mathematician. He understands the data. I'm the musician. I don't understand the data. I can do something with it, but I don't understand. So he tries to explain what happens there. And then I developed sound tools to manipulate sounds of the cello playing, like if it goes around and if it's back. I mean, if you pass the first circle, so we had 3 lines, what happens with the material there, what happens if you go closer. You have these nice terms that physicists comes up with, like spaghettification, which means that things get stretched in a way. So that's something you can really translate into sound. The other thing, which was for Stefan very important, is called redshifting, because that's the way they detect black holes. They don't see the black hole, but they see that light shifts towards the red of the spectrum because of the gravitational pull. And that you can calculate, how much something redshifts. So he provided me with formulas, which I then could translate into tools and put into the processing of the installation. And so gradually, when you walk through the installation, you get more and more copies of the shallow information that is going through this physical process, and you hear it and you see it. Yeah. And basically the idea is you walk towards the singularity, and the more you get there, the more fragmented. So at a certain point, it becomes all fragmented. But then the thing is, you can go back, of course, because we couldn't keep the people there. But we also got the cellist out in a performance, because with Klaas and me, the installations we provide, we always think also as a live performer. So each installation is also a big instrument you can play with. Okay. And so then for the vernissage and the closing of the exhibition, we literally threw Benjamin in. So we made a performance with the real-time stuff. And all the tools I was then using as a musician and Klaas was using as a visual artist were based on the information we got from Stefan. And yeah, that's a bit the way it went.
I really wish I'd seen it. That's fascinating. So Valery, you have this unique position where you've got kind of both the musical and the mathematical background. We talked about it a little before, but I'd love for you to share what's your creative process? Because I think if one starts from a position of data, you might actually lose that emotional connection. And of course, the data yet could be the magic that makes that musical composition sound the way it does. So what is your creative process? And I'm going to ask you again what I asked you on our first call. Do you think of the process of creating music as creating gravitational pull that you're going to be pulling people towards your music, a bit like a black hole? Or am I stretching here?
A little bit, maybe, yeah. But for me, the most important thing is, because I come from pop music, and I might go back a little bit, I don't know yet. No, the most important thing is when you're in pop music, it's for me it's about storytelling. I mean, trying to communicate with an audience, but the foremost is just telling stories and having, of course, do it for yourself. That's also very important for me. And I think very powerful if you work with sound, with compared to visual information, you can very easily create emotional connections using sound. So that's for me very powerful. And in the process of the album, there is 2 phases. So first there is the scientific phase, in which I also, and that's a little bit the connection that I try to get in this project. I did a PhD in pure mathematics, and I want to try to translate, communicate a little bit the beauty and also the artistic process of doing mathematics. It's also art, but it's very difficult to communicate to people. You cannot say, I'm going to show you the journey, because it's a little bit too closed in the mathematical world. So I use also this kind of intuitive feeling to transform data into sound. So I have a whole library, you could say, of all sound clips that you generate then. I also make instruments in Max MSP. I think Vincent is also using that. Once I have those 2 elements, then I start the compositional process, and then I think, like, again, in terms of storytelling, and I think about abstract stories that fascinate me. For example, falling into a black hole. For example, going to a supermassive black hole, such that there is one in the center of our Milky Way, going far away, and experiencing, for example, time shifts. There is this famous example, for example, of the twin paradox of Einstein. It has to do with speed. If you take a rocket almost at the speed of light, you have a twin brother or sister. They travel 1 hour, they come back, 1 million years have passed. So all these kind of things, and I take one topic, and then I try to make a sort of a track in which it's only my personal interpretation, of course. I try to put it in the track, and then I make a whole series of stories. And for me, the most important, of course, in the studio is that I have fun. And I'm very happy if with the music I can pull the audience into a sort of a journey that they forget a little bit about everything for half an hour, or they have a sort of a movie without visuals. That's for me the most important. And also make people see this element that if you're doing science, so that's also, the more abstract it becomes, the more closer you are to Alice in Wonderland, the more it becomes also about speculation, and it's about storytelling. So, yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah, that sounds very familiar, that story. I think it's always, well, I'm not a mathematician, but in the collaboration, it's the same thing as the artist in that collaboration with the physicists. It's like, yeah, we are creating the experience for people coming to the exhibition or the concert. And then on the other side, Stefan was very fond of, but it has to be as exact as possible. And I think that's a very interesting thing to work with, because it can be, like you said, with the colliding black holes, which Stefan also mentioned, and he was super excited. You should listen. It's like, okay, I listened to it. I searched it up, and it's like, yeah, okay, it's a sine wave. I take my MOOC with an envelope. I think I have the same sound, like just a glissando going up, something like that. It's like that's not an interesting experience for somebody who just wants an experience, because eventually as an artist you create an experience for someone. So to find like the balance there is always a thing, but it's indeed, you tell a story or you create the as experience, and you're based on something which is happening in reality and which is very hard to understand, and some really intelligent people are understanding it in some way and they can explain it again to you, but then as an artist you have to translate that into an experience for everyone. And I think for me the thing there is indeed, I like the way you say intuition, because it's like, yeah, I understand the process. I can make a Redshift tool and I can make it as exact as possible, but I don't want to have people for 50 minutes listening to only glissandi thing, because it's not interesting. It's just, it makes you dizzy. And stuff like that is, in the science-art collaboration, I think it's always, I don't want to say a fight or a struggle or something, but it's like the tightrope you need to balance.
There's some tension.
Yeah.
Pieter-Jan, you guys deal with creating experiences. I can see you want to comment on that, but I think it's important to understand how you translate that. I mean, you're building out products and collaborating and having people actually experience that and measure what that feels like. I'd love to hear a little more about how you do that.
Well, actually, to follow a little bit up on the artistic process, what I found specifically interesting and valuable is how the music fits the immersive audio system. Because, and that's a little bit what I also said this morning, you have an immersive audio system, and I heard many times music being played on it, which is not really meant for immersive audio system. So then people start to translating rock music to kind of an immersive experience, and it doesn't fit. It's not meant, well, I mean, for spatializing hi-hats and a guitar from there. So, but the music of Valery is really made for being spatialized, and it's also the topic, the space itself. So it really fits. Well, the content, the piece fits the technology, and that's what we like a lot. And so, yeah, Valery made a dedicated spatial mix. He spent a lot of time before the staging in our lab to also create a narrative with the spatial component of the music, and it adds something to the narrative. It's not just like the wow effect of look what we can with no, it has meaning, and then it gets interesting for us. But I think still there are some possibilities in the future. It's immersive, it's let's say surround, but we are also looking into more 3D aspects, so where you really as a listener walk around in a 3D space, so sound objects move between the people. The way it was displayed was still, it's coming from that direction or that direction, but it was not really yet a fully 3D multisensory space. And I talk about multisensory because you have the sound objects, which we could make 3D, like objects that are really floating in between us, but also the visual aspect. So still a screen, and for me, screen is always so limited. I think we should move away from screens. I kind of had it with screens.
Are headsets the future?
Yeah, headsets. I mean, well, we can think and dream, and I really think it's a very valuable thing to test out, to really work with holograms and to make it into a real spatial experience where you're walking in and experience the space from the inside out. We are thinking about this. We wrote a project which was at this point not granted, but we are really thinking about also creating these kinds of experiences to make it even more immersive. And once you have floating objects, you can also think about can audience interact with these objects, which is also at this point, I think, not in the piece. And I think it's valuable to also think about interaction. And it can also be educational, as you mentioned already a bit. So maybe if you start from formulas or some physical principles, can people adapt these parameters of the formulas and what happens in the data? And so add a little bit of this interactive component, I think could also be something to explore in the future.
I was going to ask about how this type of methodology, taking data and turning it into sounds and experiences, what that looks like for education in the future. Imagine a small kid suddenly really fully understanding what a black hole could, in our current understanding of black holes, of course. But what does that look like for education? Is that even something that one would go down a path and explore? I mean, at the moment, I feel it might be for people who can afford headsets, but I don't know, maybe in the future there's an opportunity to use this to interpret complex problems and concepts.
Yeah, but I think it's mostly about visualization, data visualization, and there's more and more software now available to do that. We also have help of AI to program things. And that's one of the things that we want to do, is to look at very complex, basically a lot of theoretical physics. It's like the old Greeks, it's a lot of geometry. But the thing is, it's higher dimensional geometry. So we live in a three-dimensional world. It might be that you have 10 dimensions, sometimes you have 23. In my PhD, I had infinitely many dimensions. But these are very beautiful structures, and you can make three-dimensional intersections. And I think there's a lot of, it's visualization of data, which is also not been done a lot. And you can make it, if you can make it interactive, it will give very beautiful new visuals, I think. But yeah.
It's about understanding, but also about motivation, I think. If you can bring in children, and most children don't specifically like mathematics, they want to get away as far as possible. But if you can kind of mix it with something fun, with arts, with something, an experience, then I think you could also motivate them to go into the beauty of mathematics.
And the real-world examples. I never knew what sin, cos, and tan was for. And then someone will basically explain you could use it to figure out how to land a plane. I'm like, now we're talking. I'm going to give you one last chance to say something. I want to give the audience just a few minutes to ask some questions.
Wanted to answer that question from a different angle, because it first popped in my mind that way. Like I'm also teaching kids in music, and the idea of how like data-driven music, which is for me a very natural thing, especially for the children who do electronics. It's very nice to get them to make music from things they never would imagine it would be music. But in these days, basically anything can become a starting point. And then for me, it's in those courses trying to give them like, it doesn't matter if you start from a melody in your head or a 12-tone row, or if you take a sample on your library, or you take just like your latest report and you turn it into music and try to do something with it. And then for me, that part of education is interesting, while when teaching with electronics, it's like, it's very hard-triggering imagination with them. Like, come on, it doesn't matter. You don't need to play the instrument yet. We're just going to figure out what is the concept and how can you translate it. And that's for me a very interesting opportunity from teaching to get people also into music who might not even imagine they could be making music.
And to draw inspiration from things that you probably wouldn't otherwise have flipped in your brain and done differently. I have so many more questions, but we're a little tight on time. Are there any questions in the audience? Everyone too scared to ask a complex mathematical question? Go for it.
I will ask you this. So you were telling about that the output of the data could give a basic musical result, for example, just a sine wave. What techniques did you use to make the music a little bit more interesting, like a more complex sounding? What techniques did you use?
Yes.
Anything.
Yeah, voila. But for the album, I was using a lot of spectral synthesis. So with the white dwarf data, so I had to build a synthesizer with 5,000 oscillators. So yeah, of course you cannot do it. I think there's this guy who made one physical with 1,000. Look, Mom, No Computer. It's a YouTuber who you can check it up. But 5,000 is a lot. And in order to do that, I used RStudio data science software. I also used a lot of wavetable synthesis. Yeah, that was also something that I used a lot. And MaxMSP. So programming your own synthesizers to use control signals. You can also do a lot with Max for Live and Ableton, and then you can connect everything to everything. So, but the big challenge is to make it, to balance on how scientific and how artistic you go. Yeah, voilà, that's a difficulty.
Maybe to add from my perspective, because basically our sounding world started from the cellists. So in my case, it was much more developing the tools based on whatever formulas that Stefan said, like it could happen this way, happen this way. You translate it into an effect that kind of makes that transformation of a sound in the way he describes it. But then again, like one of the things I immediately decided, like let's make it a dry wet knob, because only this thing is not interesting. It's like the sine wave. So, but as soon as you start balancing something like the red shifting, you get all these weird effects going with the original sound, and you suddenly make it very interesting, although it's actually just a slide, for example. And a lot of those things happen, and that's where the balance is between what is interesting and how correct is it.
Thank you so much. I was told we have to finish at 5:15. It is 5:15. Thank you to every one of you for joining us. I know we stand between you and Les Ardentes, but have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.